Hey everybody, I am Kevin Iole, and I think this is the first time I have done this with him on camera. I have known Tom Loeffler for many, many years, back in the days when he was one of the elite managers in boxing. Now, of course, Tom is one of the top promoters in boxing, a big career change over time, and we'll get into that. Tom is with 360 Promotions. He promotes Serhii Bohachuk, who on August 10th will be fighting in a really interesting fight against Vergil Ortiz. Also has Callum Walsh, promoted Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, the Klitschko brothers. The list goes on and on. If it's been a big show, you can bet Tom has been in and around it. Tom, with that, how you doing, my friend?
No, I'm great, Kevin. It's always great to see you. Naturally, better in person in Vegas, but it's always great to see you. And like you said, we've known each other for many, many years, and it's great to catch up with you on this Bohachuk fight.
You know, it's interesting. I want to start with what I mentioned in the intro. You were a manager. How did you decide to make the transition, and how difficult was it going from managing boxers to becoming a promoter?
You know, it's interesting. The first boxer I was working with was Kevin Kelly, the WBC featherweight champion. When he fought, he won his. He's legendary at Madison Square Garden. All the fights he had there with Troy Dorsey and coming up at MSG Boxing, and then he got his first shot on HBO to win a world title. That was actually in Reno, up your way, in Nevada, against Goyo Vargas on HBO, and then was very successful on HBO. And then I was helping Obakar. I was managing Obakar when Oscar actually fought Oba in 1999. That was the very first fight at the Mandalay Bay. So we kind of come full circle with this Bohachuk and Vergil Ortiz fight, Oscar and I. But and then I helped Shane Mosley get his world title on HBO at the Mohegan Sun. That was with Cedric Kushner, if you remember that. So I've worked with a number of world champions as a manager, and then I was managing Ed Mahone, who fought Vitaly Klitschko in 1999 in Oberhausen, Germany. And Vitaly wound up stopping Ed in the third round, but I had a good relationship with. I developed a good relationship with Vitaly and his manager at the time, and his manager told him that. Tom, that I also worked with Muhammad Ali. That's how I got into the sports business. If you remember, my partner, Harlan Warner, he was working with Sandy Koufax, Muhammad Ali, Joe Namath, all those retired, legends. And so Muhammad would come to our office every now and then to do some autograph signings or, just discuss some business deals that Harlan had for him. And so I invited Vitaly to come to our office in Los Angeles. And sure enough, after that fight, I'd say about 4 months later, he came to Los Angeles. His wife was pregnant. They had the baby here at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. And during that time, I set up a meeting with Ali and Vitaly Klitschko. And ever since then, we stayed in contact. He was there for about 3 months when his first son was born. And we developed a good personal relationship. And then over the years, we stayed in contact. And he was unhappy with his German promoter. So that was at the end of 99. And he was unhappy with the German promoter went on for a couple of years. And then in 2003, I told him, Vitaly, if you're not happy, we should just start our own promotional company. The networks will talk to you directly. The arenas will talk to you directly. You don't necessarily need a promoter for your career. So we started K2 Promotions, and that's how I got transition from manager to promoter. Yeah, and our first show was at Staples Center when Vitaly fought. Remember, he fought Lennox Lewis in 2003. And then in 2004, our first promotion under K2 Promotions was for the vacant WBC title against Corey Sanders at Staples Center. So if you can picture that being my very first boxing promotion on HBO, international TV, heavyweight champion of the world, championship of the world, that was how I started the promotional company.
Right at the top, yeah.
And then I promoted all the Klitschko fights since then.
I want to tell a story about the Klitschko brothers because I think this is interesting, and I wrote about it years ago. But it was in the 90s. I don't remember when, but I was with both Vitaly and Vladimir, and we were in the Top Rank office. I think Vladimir was getting ready to fight maybe Charles Schufert. I can't remember exactly who it was, but I think it was Charles Schufert. And I was interviewing the two of them, and Vitaly told this story. He said he came to the U.S. first, and they were born in the former Soviet Union.
Right.
And Vitaly says he came to kickboxing matches here as an amateur kickboxer to the United States, and he brought a bottle of water home and he gave it to Vladimir. And Vladimir opened it and said he would sniff the bottle of water because he wanted to breathe the air of America where it was free. And I just thought that was so incredible that, you know, and it's always stuck with me. The two of them were kind of on a different wavelength than most fighters.
Completely different wavelength. It was actually a can of Coke, because it wasn't available back then in Ukraine. Like you said, it was a former Soviet Union. He was actually a kickboxing world champion as well, Vitaly Klitschko first. And he was in Florida, brought the Coke back. Vladimir opened the Coke, but you remember the story, and he smelled it and said, oh, that's what America smells like. Because back then with the Soviet Union, they weren't really getting any real information on how it was over here in the States. And they've come a long way. Unfortunately, you know, they're in a big fight right now, fighting for their country, for their independence, and for their lives in Ukraine. Vitaly is the mayor of Ukraine. I'm sorry, mayor of Kiev, and Vladimir is there by his side. Both had very historic heavyweight championship careers, and now they're defending their country.
You know, I know you're close with both of them, and you talk to them a lot. How are they doing? I mean, what has been the burden of this war on them? You know, are they worn down? Like, what physically are they like, given, you know, the burdens that they're facing with this war?
You know, they're fierce fighters. They'll fight tooth and nail for what they believe in, and they believe in the independence and their country of Ukraine. You know, it's you know, when the war first started, I think everyone thought there's no way Ukraine could survive when Putin made that push trying to get into Kiev. You know, you literally thought there were projections that it would last maybe 3 or 4 days, maybe a week. They were lucky. And then they were able to mount a strong defensive effort and protect the capital of Kiev. You know, Ukraine kind of goes where the reason why Putin wanted Kiev is because Kiev is pretty much the nerve center, or it runs everything in the country of Ukraine. Everything kind of centers around it. You know, here in the States, you have New York, LA, so many different major metropolitan cities. But over there in Ukraine, it's really everything surrounds or is surrounded by Kiev. And once they were able to survive that initial push, and then kind of set up defensive positions. You know, it's just back and forth with the territory and the front lines, and you know, it's just it's a really, really unfortunate situation where Putin is targeting civilian targets. Also, you saw they just hit a couple weeks ago. They hit a children's cancer hospital in Kiev with you know, awful. A number of lives lost. And you know, on the front line, it's kind of out of the news, the regular news cycle these days. But you know, they're losing soldiers every day on a daily basis there on both sides, and it's just kind of grinding along this war. And they're doing okay personally, but it definitely weighs on their shoulders. I was with Vladimir in Washington D.C. I met him over there before the last aid package got approved. He was over there lobbying, and I think Vladimir really is one of the best ambassadors because he kind of puts a human face to it. It's not just like, okay, we're asking for money and more money and things like that. He kind of explains what it's for, and like I said, you can connect, you know, his character to, you know, what they're actually trying to defend, and he's very eloquent in the points that he was making out there. And you know, Vitaly is a fighter. He's a great politician running the city of Kiev and making a number of improvements. But you know, now with this invasion happening, naturally the priorities change, and they're in survival mode over there. It's okay in Kiev. It's just, you know, when you get these random missile attacks, you don't know when they're going to come. You don't know where they're going to land. They do have an air defense system up now, but it doesn't, you know, naturally it doesn't get every rocket or missile that's fired, and it really can change on a dime. You know, the wrong missile at the wrong time or the wrong location, and everything could change for both the guys.
I'm a lot older than you are, so I remember back in the day when we had bomb shelters, right? In school, we used to practice going, you know, having to go into the shelter. Like you just didn't know if something like that would happen. It's just a tragedy. Serhii Bohachuk, who is going to be fighting Vergil Ortiz, is actually Ukrainian, and I wrote about, and you've talked a lot about him defending Ukraine. let's talk about defending his WBA belt against Vergil Ortiz. And, it seems to me that's a really tough matchup for him. Now, I was impressed with his win over Mendoza. I really was impressed. I thought, way better than I expected him to perform. How do you see the fight with Vergil going? I mean, Vergil's this guy that hasn't been in the ring all that often, and when he's in there, it's usually not that long either, getting guys out of there. But how do you see that fight going, and where do you think Serhii has a chance to take advantage of Vergil?
Serhii has an interesting story, too. He won that WBC Interim World Championship, like you said. Originally, he was going to fight Fundora. If you remember, he was going to fight Fundora for the WBC World Championship, and then Keith Thurman got hurt or injured, whatever it was, and then Fundora wound up fighting Tim Tszyu, which was a great fight, and Serhii fought Brian Mendoza, a world-class fighter who had actually beaten Fundora. So that was a huge win for him. Like you said, he went 12 strong rounds. He really dominated a world-class fighter from like Mendoza. So it was a great showing for Serhii. He's very confident. This is perfect timing for him. But a lot of champions, they'll win a title and then they want some easy title defenses. And Serhii went straight into a very, very difficult title defense. Vergil Ortiz, what can you say about him? 21-0 with 21 knockouts. I know Golden Boy's hanging their hat on Vergil winning this fight. They're very confident on that side, the Vergil Ortiz side. But Serhii's very confident also. And he said, I want to fight the best. He wants to prove that he's the best super welterweight out there. And he has an interesting story too, being from Ukraine, but he was back there in Ukraine trying to get his visa renewed when the invasion happened. So he was stuck there like 2 weeks before he had the visa appointment at the consulate.
I wrote that.
2 weeks out. The consulate closed because of the invasion, and then he didn't get his appointment. He was there for 6 months. We officially got him out. We got the permission from the Minister of Sports where he got out, crossed the border to Poland. He was in Poland for about a month, going around to like 10 different hotels because there were so many refugees at the time. And then he finally got the appointment in Poland. And when he got here, you could see it was such a relief when he landed at LAX here in Los Angeles. And I picked him up. And he was like, wow. I mean, he's Ukrainian, but it almost felt like he was home here because, he's fighting for Ukraine, fighting in the ring for Ukraine. His brother's in the military. His mother's still over there in Venetia. And he's fighting for his country over here. And it's a great matchup. August 10th, Mandalay Bay. When you look at the knockout ratio, like I said, Vergil has a perfect record, and Serhii's is virtually perfect. 24 wins with 23 knockouts. The one mishap he had was under strange conditions out there in Puerto Rico, outdoor event where it was very slippery. The ring. They actually should have never started that fight. The referee had stopped the fight twice. I've never seen that before. The referee actually stopped the fight 2 times, and to dry off the ring for like 30 to 40 seconds. Which really let Brandon Adams back in the fight because Serhii was pretty much dominating Adams, winning like 6 out of 7 rounds. But anyway, that's what. So that was a mishap. That he learned a lot from that fight because he learned even though he's dominating an opponent, if he like let up for literally 2 seconds, 3 seconds, a slip of concentration, and Brandon caught him and was able to win that fight. And that's what he needs to be careful about, especially with a puncher like Vergil Ortiz.
He is a more physical fighter than I think a lot of people expected, right? He gets in there and he's rough on you and everything. Do you think that's going to be an effective style against Vergil? No, Virgil's last fight, he came up with that uppercut that, you're fighting inside. That's a very, important punch. But, Vergil seems to be a guy that generally needs a little room to punch, right? Do you think the fact that Serhii crowd him might be a good style to counteract Vergil's skills?
Well, they know each other very well. They actually sparred with each other at Manny Robles' gym when Vergil was over there with Manny, I think, for a couple of fights. So they know each other very well. And it's, they're both very confident from that sparring. Serhii's confident and Vergil's confident. Serhii's the type of guy, he's got a lot of knockouts. He doesn't have that triple G one-punch knockout power, but he just wears guys down, where he throws a volume of punches. He's very heavy-handed, and the pace that he sets is really what gets him his knockouts, where he winds guys down, just able to wear them down. And so you'll see a lot of fireworks. Vergil starts very fast. He starts from the first round throwing bombs, so it's going to be nonstop action from the very first bell. And Vergil throws bombs, and Serhii fights at a high pace. So it's going to be an all-action fight.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing that. That's going to be fun because I think that is going to be Vergil's best test too, right? With all due respect to his past opponents, he hasn't had anybody like this, and so I think this is going to be. I wrote after his last fight that I thought he was an elite fighter, just by me looking at him and his skills. But he hasn't proven it against really world-class #1 guys. This is going to be that guy.
I agree with that. I think it's the best. It's the best opponent both guys have faced. I think Vergil is going to be the toughest fight that Serhii's had, and Serhii, especially at 154. Vergil was at 147 for a number of years, and then he couldn't make that weight anymore. Moved up to 154 for the last 2 fights. So this will definitely be the biggest test of Vergil's career. Also, this is really a fan-friendly fight. This is what, there's a lot of criticism in boxing, but this is what the fight fans want to see: 2 guys in their prime, fighting each other, and with lots at stake. And that's why we've gotten such a great reaction to this fight ever since it's been announced.
I've written this year, so many great fights have happened, right? But it seems like we too far off and still have, we have 1 great fight on a card, and then we have 5 mismatches, right? Or 8 mismatches. I look at these cards and I go down the card and I see -800, -1500, -2500. And that's not going to attract fans.
Yeah.
How do we get to promoters? They pay attention. They're doing a better job now paying attention to the main event. And I think a lot of it is due to Turkey Al-Sheikh and the Saudi money that has come in getting some of these fights made. But how do we get you guys promoters? And I know you're probably not one of the guilty parties. You're one of the less guilty parties. But, how in the business do we get it so that the matchups on the undercard are better and that they're more 50-50 and we don't know who's going to win just by what corner they're in?
You really hit it on the head, Kevin, of what the biggest or one of the biggest challenges is in boxing. When Dana White, gave the green light for us to start our boxing series on UFC Fight Pass, that was one of the commitments we made to him, is that we're going to make competitive fights. When you look at the show coming up this Friday, we have a show Friday, July 26th here at Commerce Casino. You have 2 WBC Continental Americas title fights, both of them one is Omar Trinidad 15-0 versus Victor Slavinsky 15-2. Gore Yuritsian 18-0 versus Aram Amerikanian 15-0. So those 2 fights are tremendous matchups, very evenly matched, and that's a commitment we made with Dana. The fighters on our shows and that are signed with 360 know if they're going to fight on UFC Fight Pass, they got to be in competitive fights. And that's where I think UFC really had the huge advantage over, I'd say, the last 10 years, is that when you go to, and I've been to a number of shows now since the relationship with Dana and the support he's given us, those UFC shows, even from the very first fight, it's very competitive, very competitive. You don't know, you look at the odds and some might be a 2-1 favorite, 3-1 favorite, whatever it is. And the underdog will win. They're very, very great matchups. And that's what we're striving to do on our shows as well, because that's really what the fight fans want. They just want to see competitive fights. And the Bohachuk, Vergil Ortiz is great. The 2 fights that we have, the 2 title fights that we have, and really the whole card on this Friday is a great matchup. And that's really what it takes. There was a fight, a show, what was it, about 10 days ago, and I was looking at it, and then I don't want to mention the names, but you could probably figure out, like, the 2 top fights, the 2 top TV fights were 35-1 favorites on a major boxing platform. And it's just like, at that point, it really loses the value for the fans. I mean, sometimes you'll see a huge upset, like when Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz, I was there. That was the week before Triple G and Danny Jacobs fought. But still, I mean, it's very, very rare when you have those kind of high odds that the underdog will win. And that's what loses a lot of fight fans on boxing.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I think boxing can do better, and things are getting better. And I think we're at a really great time, Tom, because there are so many great fighters. Terrence Crawford and Alexander Usyk and Naoya Inoue and Junto Nakatani fought the other day. Just a sensational talent, young talent coming into the sport. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff going on, but it doesn't seem like it's getting presented in the right way. And I always think, hey, and you just kind of alluded to this, if boxing promoted the way UFC promoted and match made the way UFC match made, how much better would boxing be? People would love it.
You're right. You're 100% right. There's so many great fighters. I was actually at that Usyk versus Fury fight. I was actually there with Vladimir over there in Saudi. I was very impressed. And what Usyk has accomplished, beating Anthony Joshua twice and beating Fury twice, guys that outweigh him by 20, 30 pounds.
Well, Fury won.
You know, it's he's my pick for pound champion. But there's so many different guys. Like you said, Terrence Crawford is out there. In a way, we, you know, when we did the Superfly shows, you remember those on HBO?
Yeah.
We had Chocolatito, we had Inoue on one of the shows, we had Carlos Quadras, we had Estrada, Sol Rungvisai. Those were evenly matched fights and all very entertaining fights. Those lighter divisions were willing to fight each other because we gave them the opportunity to fight on HBO, and they wanted to prove that they were great. And that's kind of the pattern that, you know, we're trying to pattern these UFC Fight Pass shows after. And you know, it's unfortunate that some fighters are more focused on being undefeated than being great. I guess that's the best way to put it. And you know, when you protect the record that much, you know, I've seen guys 20-0, 15-0, whatever, and then they take their first step up fight, and then they're overwhelmed because they haven't been matched properly to learn, and then they get exposed. I don't think it does the fighter any good.
Tom, let me interrupt.
You see the UFC record.
I just want to say this because I want to defend the fighters there. I think it's the manager and the promoters a lot of the cases saying, hey, we, you know, right, as opposed to the fight. I think fighters are fighters and they're going to fight and they think they can beat everybody, right? In most cases. Jake Paul thinks he can beat Canelo, for Christ's sake. You know, so you know, not me. I want to just say for the record, I don't think that. But you know, I think it's the managers and promoters, isn't it?
It could be. I think it's a whole. It's a big problem when you're protecting fighters that much. It's a big problem. That's another thing that the UFC has a great advantage of, is that you'll see fighters with with records 15-7, 15-9, and they might lose a fight, and then 2 months later they're gonna be right back on. Dana puts them right back in a competitive fight on TV, and so he's really focused on making the best matches. Whereas in boxing, if you have 5, 6, 7 losses, or the people write you off, they're like, "Oh, this guy can't be good." But he might have taken a lot of tough fights. Look at Bernard Hopkins, lost his very first fight, but then turned out to be a tremendous champion. Speaking of Jake Paul, that would be a great fight. I know Callum Walsh is one of the stars on our UFC Fight Pass series, and Dana's gotten behind him quite a bit, and that would be a great rivalry with Dana and his fighter, the fighter he supports, Callum Walsh versus Jake Paul. Jake's look, a lot of people criticize him or whatever it is. I think Jake's doing a great thing. He's one of those guys that's generating his own ticket sales, his own pay-per-view sales. It's not like he's getting major guarantees from someone else, and then they're taking a loss on it. Like, he's actually generating his own. You know, you can question the type of opponents that he's fighting, but you know what he's actually doing. He gets sold out arenas, and I think I
credit for that, Tom. I agree. Yeah. You know, and I praise him for that. What I criticize him against, you know, like he was ripping Nico Ali Walsh after Nico Ali Walsh fought. Jake was 200 pounds the other day, had to strip down and make 200 pounds against Mike Perry. You know, he claims he weighed 212. You know, he looked like he weighed in the ring 240. I mean, come on. You know, but you know, whatever he weighed, he was certainly well over 200. Nico Ali Walsh weighed in at 157. What are you calling out guys that weigh 157 for?
That's
Jesus.
Challenging. Yeah, when you're that much smaller. But look, Callum fights at 154. But Callum said he'll fight him. It doesn't matter what weight. He told Dana, I'll fight him whatever weight it is. You know, 190, 200. He doesn't care. And Freddie actually, I think Freddie would give that the green light. That'd be kind of a fun fight at Madison Square Garden. You got Irish Callum Walsh against Jake Paul. But yeah, I didn't hear that where he called out Nico Ali Walsh. I'm actually close with the Ali family because of the history with Muhammad and Rashida and like that. But I didn't see that. But you're right. He definitely. Jake's very smart at choosing his opponents. Put it that way.
Let's wrap, and we'll talk about Callum. And you've got the UFC Fight Pass shirt on there. So, and so Callum, I guess Dana has been saying you want to get to Ireland and build him professionally in Ireland. I know he's popular because he's from Ireland and has had Irish fans. Any news on when we might see him fight in Dublin?
It looks like it's going to be in the fall. His homecoming to Ireland. He's from Cork, but that fight would take place in Dublin. You know, Callum's Callum's tremendous. 6-time Irish national champion, European gold medalist. He trains with Hall of Fame trainer Freddie Roach out here at the Wildcard Boxing Gym. Most of his fights have been here in Los Angeles, but he's fought twice now at Madison Square Garden at the theater. He's fought once in Boston at the Agganis Arena. So I want to really take the blueprint that I had for Triple G, where just fought all over the world in different cities, different fan bases, and apply that to Callum, because Ireland, he's got a huge fan base from Ireland, but he's a very likable guy. He's got a lot of knockouts, very entertaining guy. That's another thing with boxing, Kevin, is that, you know, when you put on exciting fights, if it's on UFC Fight Pass and we're going to have UFC fans watch boxing, they want to watch exciting boxing. They don't want to watch a 10-round, 12-round dancing contest where guys are just trying to win a decision. They want to see punches. They want to see action. They want to see knockouts. And that's what, if you look at our roster, you know, it's really heavily favored towards guys with high knockout ratios. Callum's 11-0 with 9 knockouts. And like I said, he's fighting all over the world. And if we can make that fight happen in the fall in Ireland, that's the direction it's going. And I know the Irish fans are really looking forward to him coming home.
I might have to go to Ireland for that. Let's wrap on this, because I kept you for a long time.
Yes.
I want to just play matchmaker for a second. Callum is a super welterweight, one of the top prospects. I want to see him fight Xander Zayas from Top Rank, who is also, he's a little, I think Callum's older than Xander, but less experienced professionally than Xander. When will you talk to Top Rank about seeing and do a show between the two of them before the end of the year?
Yeah, I have a good relationship with them. Bruce Trampler is a great guy over there. I've known Bob for years and years. They're kind of on a collision course. They're both young. They fought at the Garden. Callum's headlined the theater twice. Xander just headlined it for his first time recently, the Puerto Rican Day Parade. Callum fought on St. Patrick's Day over there. So if they both continue to win, both continue to build their fan bases, I think that's a fight that MSG would really like to have. And I think that's, like I said, if they continue to build their careers, that could be a great fight in the big building at Madison Square Garden. Irish versus Puerto Rican. We saw that with Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. And I think it would be perfect for Callum Walsh and Xander Zayas as well.
I want a good seat if that fight happens. I played my part for that one. Tom, we appreciate it, brother. Good luck to you. I will see you in Las Vegas when you're here for Bohachuk and Ortiz. Thank you so much for the great interview and all your time.
Thanks, Kevin. Hope looking forward to see you in August. Make sure that you turn the air conditioning on there. It's going to be hot August 10th.
No doubt. See you soon. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. Bye-bye.